In our studio right now, always look forward to our visits with Dr. Joe Congeni, Sports Medicine Center at Akron Children's Hospital, Sports Medicine Center. Joe, I know you want to talk about teeth. Last night, Corey Kluber, he went 3 innings, little bit of a back issue. And I thought Terry Francona said it best. He said, I wanted to get him out of there. It was a cool, breezy night. He's had some issues, and he didn't want to risk further injury. And I was saying this morning earlier that a lot of times, and you and I have talked about this, when you have something going wrong, whether it's a foot or back or an elbow or an arm, you kind of compensate in other areas, and then all of a sudden you got a bigger hole to get out of.
Yeah, Ray, let me just put it real clear from an Indians fan perspective before I put my sports medicine hat on. Keep Corey Kluber healthy.
Yes.
Keep Corey,
we got a lot of
Corey
baseball
Kluber
to go.
We got a lot of baseball to go. The guy's a machine. You know, they call him the Klubot or whatever. Mm-hmm. He's a machine. On a night like last night, he really gets it going and he gets lathered up. And then he goes and sits down on a night like last night that was Arctic. They shouldn't be playing baseball in Arctic, unfortunately, but that's what our climate in the north is like. And so very easily, if he's tightening up in the back and he can't get warmed up between innings, get Corey Kluber out and keep him healthy.
Yeah, I agree with that. 3 innings, 7 hits, 5 earned runs for Kluber last night. Do you often see that, Joe, though? I mean, bad back, you got a sore big toe, you walk differently, you throw differently, and then all of a sudden you have another injury somewhere else?
Oh, my gosh. Do we talk about that almost once a month or more here? I mean, that's definitely what, the compensatory issues end up leading to bigger problems later as athletes will compensate for almost anything to get through. And so the compensatory issues are a big deal. And a smart manager like Tito's not going to let that thing unravel.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you wanted to talk about a missing tooth, and we saw this in the Boston-Washington series in Game 1 when the Boston star Isaiah Thomas lost his tooth.
He's doing everything. The guy is unbelievable, and now he's a commercial for tooth injuries. We haven't talked about dental injuries in a little while, and I want to tell you what, again, the people that work the hardest in the high school setting are the high school trainers. So most of the time when a kid loses or breaks a tooth, it's going to be a high school trainer that's around. It may be a parent, too. So this is for the parents in the crowd and other people for what happens. So if the tooth is knocked out completely and you see the entire tooth, including the roots of the tooth, you only have about 5 or 10 minutes to reimplant that tooth back in, and there's a chance that the roots will take and that tooth, without any other issues, will tighten up and be reimplanted and do well.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, when the entire tooth. Now, a couple problems and caveats. When you see the root, don't mess around with holding it by the root, rubbing it on the root, taking anything, even if it fell in the dirt or whatever else. You don't want to rub off any of the dirt or things, the grass from the field on the root, because anything that interrupts the root will reduce the chance that the root will take again and that the tooth will take again and be fine. So we can wash the tooth. The mediums you can wash it in as milk. Low-fat milk, I don't know why, but milk, these tooth savers or saline, wash it off, reimplant it. You will see the entire root of the tooth and the deep cavity that the root goes in, and you replace it, ask them to clench the tooth, and then be sent in to be seen. If you cannot reimplant it or don't feel comfortable reimplanting it, but you have the whole tooth, then put it in a medium of, again, milk or saline. All the trainers have these little kits called tooth savers that have an amount of saline in it. They put them in the tooth saver, take it to the emergency room, or if it's during the day where you can get to your dentist, and they can try to replace it, and you can save the entire tooth in a case where the entire tooth is knocked out. The opposite, which happens perhaps more frequently when I've been around, is a broken tooth. And if a piece is broken off from a broken tooth, you take the broken tooth part and you put it in the tooth saver or into the milk again, but you don't have to do anything with it immediately. They can actually return to play. Sometimes there's some bleeding around it. You have to control the bleeding. Sometimes there was a hit to the head that you have to evaluate a concussion. But after you've done those things with a broken tooth, you can return to play with the broken tooth and you then should see a dentist within 24 hours. So broken tooth, they could return to play as long as it's not a concussion and you can control the bleeding. They see a dentist within 24 hours. The entire tooth out, you want to try to save it with the root. Try to reimplant it. Don't rub it. Don't hold it on the root part. Reimplant it, or if you don't feel comfortable or unable to reimplant it, to a dentist. The soonest, within 5 to 10 minutes that you get them in to see somebody, the better chance the whole tooth lives and survives.
Now, if you reimplant that tooth, is it going to stay up there until, is it going to stay?
You ask them to actually hold it in place with pressure on the top of the head and on the tooth, or clenching the tooth through the ride to get to the dentist. And yes, you can get that tooth to reimplant and get that. And so there's a big difference. If you see the whole tooth, if you see the root, you'll know it, versus a broken off piece of tooth. And a broken off piece of tooth, of course, you're not going to save that part of the tooth. They're going to have some dental work to fix it.
Right.
But with bleeding and other things, 24 hours is fine to be in. And they can actually return to play as long as you can make that safe to themselves and to other players.
That's very interesting. Dr. Joe Congeni with us, Sports Medicine Center, Akron Children's Hospital.
You know, there are some prevention in this area. We always like to throw prevention in, Ray. You're good about this. And you know what the prevention is.
Mouth guards.
Mouth guards. Okay, now, so in sports, in high school sports, what high school sports require mouth guards? As of last year with the National Federation of State High School Associations, they are required in field hockey, football, ice hockey, lacrosse, and now wrestling. You do not play those sports if you don't have a mouth guard. What about soccer and basketball?
Is wrestling relatively new?
Wrestling's new.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the risk of a dental injury without a mouth guard is about twice as much as if you're not wearing one. So the biggest thing about mouth guards is there was the talk a long time ago they might help with concussion. I've got to admit, we say just the literature's just too much now saying, no, we don't think mouth guards help with concussion. That's just not there anymore. But definitely with mouth and facial injuries, there's a benefit to a mouth guard, and the state associations have said those sports are required. And yet in a lot of other contact sports, like we'll see it occasionally in baseball, especially soccer, especially basketball, people will wear a mouth guard to save that tooth, to save some money. 2 times reduction of injury if you're wearing a mouth guard in those sports.
Wow. All right. Dr. Joe Congeni with us, Sports Medicine Center, Akron Children's Hospital. Joe, one of the fastest growing high school sports is lacrosse.
It is.
I'm also seeing a lot of injuries.
Oh, yeah.
In lacrosse. And often when we sit here and talk about real bad injuries in sports, you and I will talk about football.
Yeah.
Where does lacrosse sit as far as injuries per capita?
Yeah,
for example, compared to like a football or something.
Lacrosse is in the top 5 injuries. Yeah. It is a pretty high injury rate. And boy, have I come to know it. As my last one, my son Dominic has played the last 4 years. He's a senior. Senior night is Friday night. So I've been to a lot of lacrosse games, and I've been out on the field a lot. It seems like sometimes more than we are with football at times and checking injuries. There are shoulder injuries because of the overhead motion of shooting and stick play. There are definitely knee and ankle injuries because it's a lot like soccer and basketball with explosive movements, side to side, lateral movements, a lot of lower extremity injuries. And of course, you wouldn't let me get out of here without saying concussions are in the top 5. And I've told you before what we would need to eliminate with lacrosse, what I try to tell them at the state level, from what I see now because I've covered so many games, is the blindsided hit. Is a lot of times you're allowed to body check in boys lacrosse, not girls lacrosse. And as people come into the area in front of the goal called the crease, there are defenders on both sides, and they're not going to let you just have a free shot at their goalie. And the play that I see it most frequently, somebody comes into the crease, they're looking at one defender or looking at the goalie, and they get hit by the other defender. The blindsided hits are the number one mechanism of concussions in lacrosse. But it does have a robust both upper extremity, lower extremity, and concussion rate. And you're right, concussion is up there. But it is an enjoyable sport. It really is a fit for a lot of kids who maybe aren't a fit for football. Some of those kids that are just really quick and you can't get a body on them, can't even get a stick on them. but they were a little too small for football and other things. Wow, they really thrive at lacrosse. And I think it's great to have more sports so that we're not piling up kids who aren't getting to play in other sports. Kids have moved over to lacrosse and had great careers and had a blast playing it. It's a great sport, but it does have a lot of injury.